Erased Destiny 2, The Knower. Chapter 9, Surprise. The men reached the apartment the team had taken over. They stood against the wall, biting into the 2 rolls they had taken out beforehand until all the passers-by had disappeared from the area. Only then did Cyril throw the rope over the hook stuck above the shutter and pull himself inside. Jargon followed him. The boy expected to find a place similar to a beggar's den, but the interior of the apartment looked very neat except for the shabby walls.
Cyril, will you organize invitations for me and to tonight's ball? We will use the opportunity to identify the new mayor of Tyrdom. Meanwhile, Sonja and Uzumayant will find the previous mayor, and Tolpes will follow the lead we came up with at night. Sonja will guide you.
What am I supposed to find?
The fire mage's hideout. But I'll be happy with any information about their activities in Tyrdom and their plans for the Crystal Palace. If you're done gorging yourself, let's go shopping. I hate elegant dresses.
Because you've never worn one before.
Etienne's amused look reminded Emma that as the ruler, Etienne must have had to change her clothes quite often, and she certainly wasn't allowed to parade in her comfortable pajamas in front of her subjects. The little girl hastily stuffed the sweet berries into the pockets of her skirt, while Etienne listened in on the tracker's subdued conversation.
What about me?
For a moment, Etienne wondered if she should give the boy a task. She looked at his face, tired after a sleepless night, at his dirty, still damp shoes, and decided it would be better to let him rest.
I don't know. Not die until tomorrow, I suppose.
I'll try not to end up like Patch.
His words did not move or interest anyone. Nobody asked about Jargon's horse or the crossing to Tyrdom, as if the boy was worthless. For Jargon, who was used to worrying about his fate all the time, the indifference of the people around him was extremely painful. So, before he had time to think about what he was saying, he shouted out all his grievances and complaints.
What did I ever do to you, huh? First you trashed me in your play, then you killed my horse and abandoned me far from home, and now you're ignoring me all the time. You're a cold, unempathetic person who only thinks about checking off more tasks.
You have summed me up.
Etienne laughed. If it weren't for the quiet zone, she would have silenced Jargon with a sleeping spell. Instead, she allowed the boy to express his frustrations.
I apologize for him.
He's lucky to have found the most tolerant ruler in history. Otherwise, he'd already be warming a prison bunk. Eshen's attitude makes it easy to forget that she is in charge here. And one word of hers ends your life. Please bear it in mind.
I was just thinking that you must be tired, and that after a night alone in a strange and dangerous city, you should get some rest. If I really wanted to fulfill our mission as quickly as possible, I would take you on a raid through the guard towers as bait for multiple arrests.
Jargon sat on the bed next to Cyril's bag. The magic substance shivered, but did not soften at all to increase user comfort. Etienne, was she thinking about him? About his well-being? Was she worried about his condition?
As for your other accusations, they are as true as Cyril's earlier insinuations. It seems that slandering people is your family trait. And as I said before, making false accusations is a crime. I hereby sentence you for 1 day of community service, namely cleaning up our apartment and washing our clothes.
Her increasingly serious voice evoked memories of Nathan, Etienne sitting on the throne and listening to the unjustified grievances of the mages. Colorfully dressed people, like Jargon a moment ago, shouted over each other in an attempt to emphasize the enormity of the grievances suffered. Vandalism by the adepts? Delivering the wrong carpet? A leaking ceiling in the training room? What did Etien have to do with all this?
I guess you're talking about the evil mother-in-law. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I didn't write the play. I haven't seen the script. I haven't been to any rehearsals. I gave the theater group an idea and the names of the characters, nothing more. My goal was to find Etien, not to discredit your family. But it's clear that you are well known and liked in Sintra.
Nathan? Is that why you gave your name?
That's right. Of course, the play had to be interesting for anyone to go and see it, by which I mean Nathan. That's why I suggested a comedy based on parenting stereotypes, using our families as examples. Nathan loved theater. He even dreamed of becoming an actor, hence the choice of decoy. Umi, would you like to add anything?
It was me who took patronage over the show. I took Etien to the leading actress, and after a short meeting, Etien left the place. I helped Gorgona with organizing the costumes and finding a place to stage the play. My name is on the posters, so if you wanted to shout on someone, you could come to me. Also for giving Gorgona list of your neighbors and business partners to help her in writing the script.
Etien approached Jargon. She stood 2 steps in front of the boy, staring into his sad, fear-filled eyes. The vision of spending the rest of his life in a dungeon flashed through his mind. Why did he start yelling and making accusations instead of talking, instead of calmly asking for an explanation of the issues that bothered him?
I have nothing to do with the death of your horse. I have never dealt with the magic of life, but I suppose you broke the amulet, which caused the death of the animal inside. I see I guessed right. And now for the last point. I did not invite you to participate in this mission, and I do not feel responsible for you. The fact that you cannot deal with the consequences of your own choices is your concern and yours alone. For jeopardizing our mission with your unjustified shouting, I should tie you up and hand you over to the guards. However, despite your negative opinion of me, I will not do that. Do you know why? So that Cyril does not focus on saving your skin instead of realizing my goals. In the evening, Sonja will take you home, and if you die by then, it will be your own fault.
Everyone silently went about their assigned tasks, so only the father and son remained in the room. An angry father with a somewhat lost son. In order not to sink any deeper, Jargon gave way to Nathan, who reluctantly took charge of the leaky, waterlogged boat that the boy's existence had suddenly become.
You've made yourself at home.
Cyril did not answer. He was afraid to leave Jargon at home alone, because the irresponsible boy was likely to bring the gods upon them. On the other hand, taking him to the meeting in the merchant's lodge could have ended up much worse, throwing him in a dungeon for economic espionage, or expelling him from the city. He looked at his son eating the breakfast left on the table, and considered what to do.
I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I promise not to cause any more trouble. I'll finish my breakfast and then take a nap. I spent the night at an abandoned construction site and I think I caught a cold. Can I use your blanket?
Of course. Thank you for not planning to wander around Turdham. As soon as I get the invitations for Etien, I will show you some tourist attractions. There are rats nesting downstairs, so don't open the door on the ground floor. We don't have a bathroom, we use a bucket in the other room. Before pouring anything down the drain, make sure no one can see you.
Cyril thought that Jargon had survived the winter in the harbor without the support of his parents. He had even earned his keep. Deprived of care and shelter, he had survived the night in Teardam. Enough reasons to give him a minimum of trust, and not to expose himself to Etienne's wrath by neglecting issues important to her.
Remember, it is not Sintra, and I won't pull you out of the dungeon with a full purse.
Don't worry, Dad. Etien will probably be back from shopping soon and make sure I don't do anything irresponsible. Although she seems calculating and cold, she will get us out of any mess without hesitation. On the one hand, this makes me happy, but on the other hand, it worries me. She thinks about herself too little. She has other flaws too. Workaholism, for example.
Jargon's smile made Cyril leave the apartment as quickly as possible. There was a strange melancholy in the boy's gaze. Although his lips formed a broad smile, his eyes remained sad. Cyril wanted Jargon to stay inside until he returned, to sleep and recover from the stress he had experienced. However, he suspected that the opposite would happen.
You're not making my job any easier.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at Etien.
What am I supposed to do now? How do I get her attention if you've offended her? Couldn't you have waited to shout until you were alone in the room and she could hit you on the head without worrying about her position?
Has she ever hit you?
Nathan fell silent. He remembered times when he had asked Etien to punish him, to make it easier for him to forgive himself, but she had always refused. She slapped him once, when he said too much. He touched his own cheek. That time, he didn't even feel it. He gave Etien a stick so she wouldn't tear her hands on his rough skin. Before leaving the apartment, Nathan wanted to perform the assigned tasks, so he started with washing Etienne's dress. He sniffed the dress. He couldn't believe that Etien still used her favorite orange bath oil.
Etien is very forgiving. She always opposed corporal punishment. Contrary to appearances, she didn't like throwing people in the dungeon. She would often sentence the culprits to community service or guard supervision. I come from a desert. A place where beating was the only recognized form of punishment. Hence the association.
Do you think she will forgive me? Let me stay in Turdum. I don't want to go home.
She'll change her mind if we prove useful. If she thinks we can help her fulfill her mission.
Nathan sighed. He swept the carpet, cleaned dishes, and looked out the window. Cyril had long since disappeared around the corner of the neighboring building, and few passers-by were walking on the promenade below. The whole neighborhood gave the impression of being a desolate and unfriendly place.
Why didn't you tell her that you are in my body?
I don't know how she would react. I will do it when we are alone. When she could laugh, cry, or hit me with a spell.
And after she knows that you are in me, what would she do? Allow us to accompany her?
She would demand me being me, I suppose. Tracking down her enemies, sleeping with her, cleaning her apartment. Etien was never good at that. In the palace she could use magic for cleaning and repairing damaged furniture, for doing shopping, for writing official documents.
Jargon decided that whatever happens, he couldn't allow Nathan to uncover his identity to Etien. Otherwise, he would lose his life, just as it happened to Merigold. Or even worse, 10 could kill him to take Nathan back if other methods failed. Jargon didn't want to track anyone. He didn't want to sleep with a girl, even if it was Merigold, not before getting married. Nathan wanted to leave the apartment, but Jargon didn't allow him to do so. He used Cyril's bed and blanket, decided that half an hour rest is what he needed the most. Nathan felt helpless. He couldn't make Jargon's body move. He learned the limitations of his own willpower. What if he tells Etien the truth? What if she asks him to protect her, and then she dies because of him? Because he is not able to control Jargon? Nathan decided to wait a bit till they returned to Sintra. After an hour of rest, Jargon got up and let Nathan find Merigold. Despite clear signs of fatigue and lack of sleep, Nathan felt comfortable in the stranger's body, comfortable enough to explore the city. He stocked up on water and 2 sandwiches and, under cover of darkness, followed Etienne's trail. He arrived at one of the many marketplaces in Turdum, filled to the brim with goods and buyers. And those who could not afford to buy anything feasted their eyes on the magnificent creations from all over the world. In the crowd, Nathan looked for 2 familiar figures. His attention was drawn to a tall column with a statue of a horseman. From the stone saddle, he could look out over the square. He approached the statue and began to climb. He repeatedly slipped on the rough stone, and after only a few minutes, his clothes were in need of repair, and his skin was covered in bandages. But Nathan did not give up. His own weakness, powerlessness, the limitations of his limp arms irritated him no less than the curtailed magic frustrated Etien. Struggling with his disobedient body, he assessed his own combat capabilities. Usefulness on the battlefield. When his hands were covered in blood, Nathan collapsed on the sand. He sat down in front of the monument and rested with his eyes closed. In this body, he had no chance of defeating anyone, of winning any duel. He was unable to protect Etien. He was useless.
I hate climbing.
The throbbing pain in his hands brought back memories that Jargon did not want to see at all. Different rocks, different landscapes, the same powerlessness. How many times had he fallen off the rocks during Seeker's training? How many times had climbing put him in hospital before he learned to land relatively safely? One thing was for sure, Jargon would never become a Seeker. Even if he had to work in a mine, he would never choose to be a spy. Not for anything in the world. As a child, Nathan dreamed of becoming a mage. He dreamed of escaping the desert and living somewhere else. He partly achieved this by moving to the palace. Although Etien allowed him to attend lessons with the ice adepts, he remained true to the path he had chosen at the beginning, because Etien saw in him only a talented spy, someone who would watch her back from the shadows. She didn't need his magic for anything, so he quit the classes. Everything he did for someone. He earned money for his family, won games for his friends, and honed his skills for Etien. It was as if he was most afraid of not being good enough, not being useful enough. He was afraid of failing to live up to the hopes placed in him.
Let's try on the other side of the river. That's not my style.
You're so picky. It's just a ball, not your wedding.
None of the dresses I like look good on a flatboard. Maybe I'll stuff my corset with stockings?
Laughter of Ame directed Nathan towards the girls he was looking for. He finally spotted them talking near one of the shops. Careful not to be seen, he crept a little closer, so he could hear perfectly well what they were talking about. Jargon was fascinated by Merigold's facial expressions, all the new emotions he perceived in her: amusement, self-irony, boredom, irritation, impatience. The old Merigold was usually cheerful, less often sad or angry. She was also indifferent, sore, or excited, but she never made fun of herself. She didn't approach life with as much distance as she did in Teardam. Few things irritated her, and even if she didn't hide her emotions behind a cool smile. Nathan, on the other hand, saw quite a lot of the old Etien in New Merigold. The smiles, the squinting of the eyes, the finger gestures she used to direct at him. Out of habit, Etien asked him to keep the girl bothering her busy, but he couldn't answer that call. Not in Jargon's body.
But I don't know the language. Let's buy something here. You can always improve your appearance with makeup.
I know the language. If it's not enough, we'll communicate with signs. Come on, they're about to close the stalls and you'll have to sew something for me.
Nathan followed the girls towards the river. He crossed the bridge behind them and followed them to another market. At the very first stall, Etien spotted what she was looking for. She pointed to a dark green dress made of soft, plush material and drew a few circles in the air. She wanted to try it on, but the salesman clearly did not understand the message because he whispered something in desertion.
See, I told you we wouldn't get along.
The lady would like to try on the dress. Where's your dressing room?
In the back.
The salesman muttered as quietly as possible, while the man took the dress off the mannequin. Yume resigned to her fate, looked at the clothes hanging under the roof in search of something in her size, and Nathan continued the conversation in the language of the desert.
It will have to be shortened a little. It has to be ready today.
Yes, yes, keep your voice down.
When Nathan reached for the dress Etien had chosen, he noticed some scratches on his hands. He quickly put them behind his back, but Etien was already healing him.
Why do you always wear black? I think you'd look prettier in other colors.
You think so? I've never really thought about it. I know. Choose something you think will suit me and I'll buy it. And I'll wear it right away.
Merigold's cheeks turned red, and choked on her laughter. Nathan, on the other hand, struck a pose of a relaxed guy on vacation. He stood with his arms akimbo, one arm on his hip, smiling and watching the shop displays with interest.
Let me take a look at you. How about navy blue?
Or gray like your eyes.
Jargon was most surprised by the words spoken. He had never flirted with any girl, and it came more than naturally to Nathan. It was as if he had been complimenting girls all his life. Hidden behind a facade of aloofness, the boy watched Merigold's reactions, so different from her usual behavior. To end the stressful discussion, Merigold hid in the changing room. She did not understand why suddenly the conversation with Jargon had taken her breath away, why her face had turned red and her hands were trembling. She slightly pulled back the curtain. Jargon looked like he used to. He had lost a little weight, but she was not attracted to him. Pale, nondescript, with typical brown eyes and hair. Nothing special about him. To keep her hands and eyes busy with something neutral, Merigold tried on a dress. It was a good 2 hands length too long and the sleeves reached the ground. The outfit resembled the squid's costume, perfect for hiding something illegal. The slit in the skirt revealed nothing but the black lining, and the sleeves were full of black inserts. Merigold tied a black ribbon around her waist and presented herself to her friends waiting in front of the shop.
You look beautiful. I found something decent too, so...
Great. Jargon, please tell him that my dress needs to be shortened.
I already did. What about me? What did you choose?
The cheerful tone of his voice, something Merigold was not used to, made her face turn pink again. The girl disappeared into the changing room. His pushy, somewhat inept flirting reminded Etien of Saskiel. She leaned her head against the fabric curtain, immersed in memories of her old life. Maybe all young men tried to get attention this way.